Shawna, I also want to ask you, how has your experience dealing with panic attack, agoraphobia, depression influenced your career as a mental health advocate?
Well, like I never set out in my life thinking that I would ever be a mentor or an advocate for mental health. But, I think that what really inspired me to push my book forward was we were at a point where we were going through a pandemic.
Okay.
And there was a lot of the fear of the unknown. And people were having to isolate. And as humans, we are not by nature meant to be isolated. So I think that was opening the door to a lot of people suffering from depression and isolation and fear of not knowing, is this something that is going to kill us, or I don't want to go to the hospital, and I think, for me, 20 years before, I had went through a panic disorder that turned into agoraphobia, and I didn't leave my house for over a year.
Yeah.
So the mental anguish, like I was saying, if I wasn't depressed before back then, I had become depressed because all the things that I could normally do on a daily basis were basically taken away from me and stripped away from me because of this irrational fear that I had. And, I kind of almost don't even want to give credit to irrational fear, because it's a fine line. There was a fear, but the fear was based on a compilation of traumas that had left me in a state where I did not trust the world. I did not trust myself. I did not trust in a higher power, so the fear inside me was legitimate, but was that flight and fight that was going on really a life or death situation? No. But what happened as a result of all this, while I was dealing with this, it started to really mess with my sense of self-worth and my sense of self-confidence and esteem in myself, because I couldn't do these things that I could do that everybody does on a daily basis, leave the house, right? And now all these people that were going through COVID were told to stay home, not to go out. And the fear of the world became a scary place because this thing was airborne, right? And so a lot of people didn't know how to deal with the isolation. For me, I used it as a creative space and outlet to get a lot of things done, because I had already lived through like my own pandemic within my head 20 years before. There are ways in which you can alleviate some of those, the fear, but you have to have the tools to be able to do it, because it's a lifestyle change, and I didn't suffer from panic attacks, but it's like, who wants to stay home? That's like being in prison, right? And then some of these people, like, are families who are used to their husband or wife going to work and their children going to school, and not having to be in the house sequestered with people for 24/7. So that took its toll on a lot of people. And so yeah, for me, that's really what inspired me more so to push through and to put my book forth, because I started to see that, and also realized that many, when I was going through panic disorder, I was 21. When I started to try to go to like some learning annex type of events, I would go to events that would be on the topic of panic attacks, because even though I'd been cured by a medicine man, it was like there was not a lot of explanation about it. It was like, this is, you hit rock bottom and then the next day you're cured. But I'm like, what the hell happened to me? Whatever it is, I want to learn about it, because I never want that to happen to me again. And in doing so, I realized that that when I was suffering, the demographic of people that suffered from panic attacks were middle-aged people, like with a predominantly higher rate in women. So people that were 40, 50, and 60. Now I was 21, 22, when this happened. Now flip the switch 20 years later, the highest demographic of people suffering from panic disorders are 17 to 25-year-olds with a higher ratio of women than men. Man. So how in 20 years did we flip the switch to a different demographic? I was 21. I was like, I'm not ready to have a midlife crisis. Okay, so now all the children are having midlife crises, I'm like, and you're so young and you just kind of listen and, to what your doctors say. And sometimes you get kind of trapped in this void of not knowing. And, when you're seriously at that level of depression and you don't have the resources, going to regular doctor and your doctor's like, oh, you're fine. And you're like, no, I'm not fine. Or you're suffering from panic attacks and they give you medication. And in my case, the medication made me worse. It made me suicidal, and that was one of the known effects of Prozac back then. So I am not a big champion on medication per se, although I think medication does work in some people, but it might not work for everyone. So what are your answers to this? How do you deal with your life situations? We have all these crazy things going on in our world right now. And, you want to blame like guns, you want to blame certain things, but it's like, well, let's focus on the mental health of our world, because a lot of people are suffering and we don't know how to navigate our emotions. When you're feeling bad, you're just like, oh, I don't want to feel bad, so I'm just going to like pretend it doesn't exist, or I'm going to try to do something happy. No, we need to sit in that sadness, because in that sadness is the truth. And the only way that we're going to get over that sadness is if we deal with it head on. And sometimes we don't know how to deal with that. We don't have that understanding. And that was something that I had to learn the hard way.
Wow. I love your answer to that. Again, Shawna, you wrote about your mother's psych friends, Perry, who was a trance medium, and spirit uses body to communicate through him. You also spoke about Judith, a Cuscasian lady, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Judith,
who is a white witch and works with magic. That they often talk about their interpretation of being seers and light workers, and as they use their work to the greater good of mankind. I am particularly intrigued by this because it is mostly in contrast to what is most common of African spirituality. Now, I want to ask you, could you expand a bit about this?
So my mother has always had an interesting group of friends. My mom was a tarot reader, so she had a plenty of friends that had different unique gifts. I say unique because although we are open to levels of spirituality, there are some things considered like pseudoscience, science, or I don't know, not necessarily real. But I was always around people that were either mediums. One of my best friends, actually, she's a medium as well, but we don't always talk about it, but she has the gift and the ability to communicate with people that have passed on. And Perry was like a sort of dad mentor to me, and he had that ability where spirits would come through and communicate with him. And I've seen it happen, where he has spoken in different languages that he does not know how to speak. And so Judith considered herself a white witch because she was a practicing Wicca. She used herbs. She used alternative medicine, in ways and practices of spirituality. And when I say white witch, for people that might not know what that is like, it's like praying to the angels, praying to God, praying to the sort of lighter energies of the world, and manifestation prayer. And the power of prayer is real. And I mean, I know because as I was being prayed over, I was healed in some, in this sweat lodge. I was always around these people. And I personally feel like they don't get enough credit in the world, because there are a lot of things that go on in our world, that there are protectors of, or they're the gatekeepers of our higher purpose, not just what we do in our daily life, but a higher purpose of living and a higher consciousness of awareness. So there are, just like we have military people, there are people that I know, like my friend Jeremiah, who is a ordained minister, who there are like churches that have people that practice, in demonology and do these sort of exorcisms and go into spiritual battle, like on behalf of people and stuff. And, we write movies about them and they're called horror films, but it's like, there is a beautiful aspect of the spirituality and a higher consciousness of faith and belief and something bigger.
Wow, thank you for shedding some light on that. Now, Shawna, you were 21 years when you first experienced panic attack. Before this time, I know that you have some friends around you. What were their reactions to you at the time that you were sequestered in your home for over a year? Is there anything, or is there anyone who stood or keep a permanent concurrent shake on you, or you were totally forsaken?
I think that I had a lot of friends, and as I was going through them, I distanced myself from my friends because they tried to think. I don't think that they really understood what was going on with me. And, they would try to think, oh, well, don't worry, I'll take you. They would push me to try to get out of that. Really, the people that helped me were the people that I didn't even know that well in a lot of cases. And it was, like my therapist at the time, she was somebody that I relied on connecting with. I could not connect with my normal friends at that point in time. They didn't have the tools or the experience to deal with me. And I think it was a very big ordeal that I didn't even understand. So I felt a little bit of a rejection towards them, because they would try to push me to do things and get me out of things that I couldn't get out. And then that would make me more frustrated. So in many cases, like, it was the people that were most spiritual. Like I say, my friend Jeremiah, he was a priest. He is a priest, but like he said, one thing that stuck with me even to this day, and that is, he said, Shawna, you need to learn to love yourself when you're broken. And nobody had ever told me that, because we live in a society where you have to be perfect, or you have to be a good person or a good girl, or you have to be a certain way, and you have to look a certain way, and you have to be normal, and this is the definition of normal, and all that stuff. So I never, it was a mind-blowing kind of experience. And he said, if you don't know how to love yourself, then let Jesus love you until you learn how to love yourself. And I was like, what? Like, whoa. Okay, Jesus is going to love me, because I don't know how to love myself. But I mean, the main point of it was that at that point in time, I didn't love myself. I mean, I was probably the biggest person that pushed myself away from myself. Like I was, it's like life had kind of broken me down, and then I became sort of my own bully in bringing myself down. I became the negative voice. Nothing's ever going to work for you. Nothing's ever going to be right. You're never going to like have parents. You're not going to like ever be happy. You'll never find love. It's that negative voice. And this is what I'm saying was taken out of me by, all those thoughts, that negative energy, all that fear that had built up was taken away, and so when you like look and you say, oh, I don't have any self-esteem, or I don't have any sense of self-worth, it was like all it was doing was building and building up inside me. So it was like a mountain of dysfunction and bad energy and to a point where I was creating some of that. So I didn't know how to love myself at that point. So I couldn't let anybody else love me. So here comes Jeremiah and he says, oh, let Jesus love you. I was like, what? Jesus doesn't even like me. Like I'm just a forgotten child,
Oh.
So, it was really about uncovering like a lot of the layers of that stuff in the process of what I needed to go to. But it was like, I had to have like these sort of spiritual mentors, even if it was just my therapist showing up for me every week to let me talk and to giving, and whether it was just listening or what was giving a tangible piece of advice that helped me sort of open that, it's like a video game, right? Like you want to get all the points, you want to get all the dots, you want to, get to this, and then you get to level 1, right? And now you get to level 2, and it's a little bit more than level 1. And you have to kind of get through that. But it's like, I can't go from level 1 to level 10. I had to go through each process because all this stuff was not born overnight. It was an accumulation of years of it. And then the escalation of building the narrative, and I had to basically take it like an onion, peel the layer and go, okay, I worked on this, peel the layer, I worked on that, peel the layer, and there's no books written on how to do all this stuff. Like I'm not even saying that I'm an expert in this. I'm just, if I'm an expert, it's only because I lived through it by experience, but I'm not a trained professional. I just know what it was like to be in it, how it happened, how I was cured, and how I was able to overcome it. So, I think that what my book offers is just sort of an opinion and insight into my journey of how it happened and how I overcame it.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love your deep and extensive, answer to this. Now, I was also going to ask you, in your book, you wrote of a woman who keep appearing to you in your dream countless times. And I want to ask you, do you think this woman has a spiritual role to play in your experience with panic attack, or it's just an ordinary dream? What do you think about that?
Well, it wasn't an ordinary dream. The skeptics would say it was just a dream. It was just a, figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
But I legitimately lived across the street from a school that had numerous paranormal happenings.
Yeah.
And what happened was that they built a school on Tongva land, which is an indigenous tribe from Los Angeles. And there was certain areas there that like it was very scary to go into, and people that school had so many things. People that have quit, people that have seen apparitions, people that have experienced spirits there. And I think in part what I was going through was sort of my own psychic calling or a gift trying to manifest that I didn't understand, but having the
Wow.
ability that I feel that there was this spirit that was trying to communicate to me. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I was going through panic disorder. Had I not been going through all that stuff, I would have maybe seen it for what it was. But, you know, at the end of it all, there were some archaeologists and they found the bones of indigenous people that were buried inside a well. So there had been some indigenous people killed in that spot. And I think that it wasn't necessarily a crazy, scary ghost story, but maybe something that had happened there that was unsettled and unsolved murders, you know, that had went on there. And I think street, my background, you know, the spirituality, the spiritual journey that I was going through, somehow I think this woman was trying to connect with me.
Wow. Wow, that sounds quite very deep. Now, Shawna, could you talk a bit about your sources as a filmmaker? I read in your book that your Fox-directed movie, Rose Garden, won several awards, you know, garnering Best Film and Best Actress. Can you talk a little bit about your sources as a filmmaker?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had become a filmmaker and I was making a lot of different short films, you know, at the time, and writing, going to film festivals, and I'd won some awards for that. Rose's Garden was my first directed short film, and it starred Tippi Hedren from Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. So it was my first time working with directing, but also my first time working with a really professional actress, especially someone that was one of Alfred Hitchcock's main, you know, female protagonists in his movies. So that was a very beautiful moment for me that I got to share. And I did like maybe a handful of shorts, and then I was trying to move into features, but I started to get by a lot of corporate companies to do new media projects, because at that point people were starting to advertise on you know, social media channels and stuff. And then I stopped filmmaking to go back to school and get a degree in writing, because when I was 21, I had a panic disorder, so I had never finished my college degree. And then after that, I decided to write a book. And so I took some time off of filmmaking, but I just recently finished a year writing program through the Writers Guild Foundation Veterans Writing Program with my television writing partner. Dustin and I had met in, you know, Fox Diversity Writing Program years ago, and we decided to write together. He worked on a show called House, and he has written some freelance episodes. So we just wrote a television pilot that we're going to try to take out in the next couple of months. It's called Guardian Brigade, and it's about a female atheist Green Beret who gets assigned to a special task force full of celestial soldiers. So yeah, we're going to try to take that out. I'm going to direct another short film, and I'm trying to raise money for a feature film right now. So I'm back at it, but I did kind of sort of take a divided path to go to school and to write this book.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite amazing. Now, I want to ask you, could you tell us what publishing is like for an indie author like yourself? And what are the challenges that you've encountered in terms of marketing Fearless, Conquer the Demons of Mental Purgatory? And what are the mediums also that your future likes to promote this book?
Well, I think being a publisher right now is a very interesting, it's an interesting time. So you have more authors coming out and on board, but I tried to go through some of the traditional routes of publishing at first, and sent query letters. Everybody pretty much gave me a shot, but it was like trying to find the home for, like, what is the home for my place? And I got some really great feedback from Atria. They were like, that's where I wanted to publish. But they said, we kind of felt like you would get lost in some of the other titles, but we love your book. So everybody was super nice to me. My book editor was like, oh my God, you're getting the nicest rejection letters ever. I tried to go to Shambhala, but it was like my book didn't quite fit in because they're like publish mostly Buddhist books and stuff. And although this was like sort of a spiritual transformational book, it was more like on the memoir section, as opposed to me talking about like the fundamentals of Buddhism and so forth. But they even gave me a nice, like really nice rejection letter. So like people in the industry were really nice. I think what I started to find out is that I'm not famous. I don't like, do I have 5 million followers? That seemed to be important aspects of publishing. Is she going to sell books? Can book do well in a mainstream medium? And at the time, I just decided, I'm just going to actually publish the book myself, which is harder. But at the same time, I never like wrote my book thinking, okay, this is going to be a bestseller and everybody's going to get it. But I felt like I wrote the book because I thought, if I can be an example to somebody who's going through what I'm going through, and anything I say in there resonates with them, or anything somebody has said to me, like I told you, Jeremiah said something to me. I've had several like little kind of spiritual, like enlightened little elixirs of magical words, basically, that stuck with me and resonated with me and helped me get over something. If there's anything in the book that I say or that somebody has said that basically saved me, helps them, then I've done my job. And I've gotten people that write me after they've read my book, and they were just like, wow. Like, I wanted to read the book from somebody who had gone through it, and we looked for you. I wanted to meet you, and I feel hopeful of my challenges and stuff. So that's really what the book is for. Sure, you want to have sales in the book, but like, honestly, isn't it better to kind of I think there's something in the book for everybody who reads it, because it does give you a sense of like your own purpose and help, and maybe looking at some of the things within yourself. But if it literally saves somebody's mental health, that's what's more important to me. And I'm getting that kind of feedback, but it's a lot of work just to kind of show that visibility, when you're not famous.
Wow. Thank you very much for that. Now, I was going to ask you for the very last time, this is going to be my last question. What sort of advice do you have for people who suffer from panic attack, agoraphobia, depression, and other kind of mental health issue? What would you tell people in this category?
I would say don't give up on yourself. You know, that you're worth the journey, that the things that have happened to you are not necessarily your fault. They could stem from other people's doings, but do not give them power over you.
Mhm.
There is a way out of this,
Yeah.
but you have to stick to it. You have to be willing to face that person in the mirror and to you know, also not hold it inside, but to be able to ask for help, because it's more common than you think it is. You know, anytime I've been anywhere and I share anything, not necessarily, oh, the whole dramatic past of it, but, oh, well, I had fear, you know, go try it. Like, I encourage anybody to try the next time you're at a birthday party or you know, a function or whatever, and you meet a group of people, to just give an honest fact about yourself, that, you know, you might be insecure about something, like, oh, I wanted to write this book, but I'm so scared. You know, people go, you know what, I was scared too, and yeah, I did this, and I, you know, it's a way to connect with other people, and you'll see that we don't have to be perfect all the time. We don't have to show this mask of ourselves that we're just these perfect beings, because we're not. We're like all flawed, whether it's trauma or you had a bad experience. You know, if you live enough life, you're going to go through these ups and downs. There's going to be an ebb and flow of energy, but I would say start with asking for help.
Oh, thank you so much for your advice. Thank you so much, Shawna, for coming on the show and for talking about your book, Fearless, Conquer the Demons of Mental Purgatory. For viewers who would like to get a copy of Fearless, I left a link in the description part of this interview for you to get a copy directly on Amazon. It's truly an emotional book that had me in captive until I finished indulging my relative emotions in it. It's a powerful memoir that actually pulls me in. And I also left a link to my old video, the one I made a year ago, about this book, Fearless, Conquer the Demons of Mental Purgatory. Thank you so much once again, Shawna, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you tremendously.
Yeah, you're welcome.